Hello everyone, my name is John Casey. I'm a chartered physiotherapist based in Neenah, County Tipperary. I'm delighted to do this brief introduction to physio for you. You'll have to bear with me as I'm not very good on tech and I haven't done this kind of thing before, but we'll do our best. Um, as I said, I'm a chartered physiotherapist. What a chartered physiotherapist is a state registered physiotherapist. So there's lots of different types of physios and there's lots of different qualifications to get to physio. But chartered physios are physios who have done a university based qualification in physiotherapy. And as I say, we're state registered and we are uh, independently governed. So there's a certain criteria in education and in continuing education that we have to meet in order to be allowed to keep working. Um, Physio is a really broad kind of a job. There's something in it for everyone. The area that I focus on and the area that I work in is private practice. Um, and within that private practice, my practice is a musculoskeletal based practice. What musculoskeletal means is that I deal with uh, injuries to bones, joints, ligaments, muscles, nerve, soft tissue type injuries that people get on a day to day basis and they come into me with them. Um, we see a varying type of client here. We see people from 4 to 94. Um, we see people who are generally independent. Um, they are restricted through injury, restricted in doing their job, or they're restricted in the type of sports they want to play. Um, Traditionally, private practice musculoskeletal physiotherapy deals with a lot of sports injuries, and we see a lot of teams and players with injuries coming in here. But that's not all of it. There's also farmers who hurt themselves out working. There's people who cycle, people who are office workers who are sitting all day, who have back and neck trouble, people who are driving for a living, which is really hard on the body, or people who are just commuting a long distance to work, who all have aches and pains or various types of problems as a result of that. We also see people who have had surgeries, um, mainly cruciate repairs, people who've had hip and knee replacements, and increasingly over the last few years, shoulder replacements. So we work with the consultants and we see them here for their rehab, and then they go back to the consultant and we fill the consultant in on how they're getting on. And we see them right through until they're back to their normal activities. So that's a little bit about me and what I do. In the next section, I'm going to get into how I got here. Thank you. So, I want to give you a bit of a background of my journey to where I am now. So, I was in secondary school in Neenah CBS here in Tipperary, and I was very lucky that my subject choices allowed me to be very science based. I loved science, so I was able to take physics, chemistry, biology for my leaving cert. So, I knew I was going to be in a science based profession or at least do a science based course at college. Um, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I looked at all options as is wise to do and thought that maybe physiotherapy would suit me best. So I went into it the same as most males anyway, my age, wanting to concentrate on the sports side of things. But once I got into physiotherapy, I realized that it was very different to what I expected. So that's where a background research really is invaluable in getting as much information about what course you want to do. So you go in with your eyes wide open. Uh, so I went to Scotland to study physiotherapy because I didn't get enough points to do it here in Ireland. But it turned out to be a great move. My course was excellent. It was great to get away from home, and it was a major growing up step in my life, I suppose, to have to head abroad at 18 and something that really stood to me. The course itself that I did was a 4 years honours degree course. You could finish after 3 with a Bachelor of Science, and I stayed on for the extra year to get an honours degree. And after that, I worked in hospitals in the NHS to get some experience, and I did lots of different types of work. I worked with people with post heart surgeries, and I worked for 3 months spell in a stroke unit, which was really good to see. I worked with people after hip and knee replacements for another 3 months, and that's what happens when you qualify as a new grad physio. You do 3 month spells in different disciplines, which is great to get experience. Then I came home to Ireland and I started working in private practice, in other people's private practice, to get experience, and I worked with several teams on my way up. So I worked with a few GAA teams, and I was very lucky to work with some rugby teams then in Limerick, and I got in on the rugby scene. We had great success over a few years with Shannon Rugby Club. We won a few AIL titles, and that kind of put me on the radar for a Munster rugby job when it came up, which I went for and got. So I worked for 2 years full-time with Munster rugby, and then that put me on the radar for a Tipperary job, Tipperary hurling, which would be my passion and my sport growing up. I was never very good, but it was great to get involved with those, and I spent 7 years working with the Tip hurlers. All the while I was working in private practice as well, except for Munster rugby, because that was a full-time role. The Tipperary role was a part-time role, so I did my day job, and then in the evenings I went off and the weekends and worked with Tip. And since then I have just concentrated on private practice. So I have lots of different experience in physio. The one thing I'll say is, for people going into physio who want to work in that sports scenario, it is not easy. It's long days, it's working every weekend when your friends are off, and maybe when your friends are going out, you're going to be working the next day at matches, and there's a lot of sacrifices to be made. So it's not all the glamour that you see with the big crowds on the final days. There's a lot of working at training sessions, standing beside a pitch where at least the players are moving to keep warm. You're freezing, soaking, and you have to be there all the time. You're also first into training session. You might arrive 2 hours early for the session, and you'll stay an hour or an hour and a half after the last person, or after the session is finished, until the last person is finished in physio. So it's really long, really taxing, but very enjoyable, but for a short time. It's not something really that can be sustained long term, especially if you have wife and family. You need to be at home. So as life changes, physiotherapy is great because it can change too, and it's not a set role, and it's a role that you can adapt to your own situations as you go on. Just to give you a little insight into the various types of work that's available within physiotherapy. It is really broad and wide-ranging, and I really believe that there's something for everybody in physio. Generally, you can be a hospital-based physio, you can be a community-based physio, which means you call to people's houses and you work with people within the community, or you can be a private practice-based physio. And within these 3 main settings are different disciplines of physio and different types of work. So orthopedic physio deals with kind of the work on bones and ligaments and joints, and you work with orthopedic surgeons who are repairing fractures or doing joint replacements, and you're helping people get back on their feet after these types of injuries or surgeries. There's pediatrics, which is working with kids with disabilities or developmental problems, which is really rewarding work, and the physios who work in it really love it. There is working in neurology, which means working with people who have problems with their nervous systems, like nerve injuries from strokes or from spinal cord injuries from accidents, or from certain types of conditions or diseases like neuromuscular dystrophy or multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's, these types of disciplines, which is a really interesting and developing area of physio as well, and really rewarding. While it's more slow moving kind of rehab, it's really rewarding to get these people improved and to help them have some quality of life. There's also working with elderly people in balance work and falls prevention and general strengthening and mobility work, which I've done as well and is great fun, really enjoyable and rewarding too. There's working in cardiac rehab, which is working with people after cardiac problems or cardiac surgeries to help them get their exercise tolerance up and build them back up again. Then you have the sports injury area, which can mean working in a clinic or working with a team or working on a pitch or traveling. And there's also a new area which is developing rapidly of animal physiotherapy, which is a subsequent course that can be done after doing physiotherapy, and it's really prominent in the horse industry at the moment with equine problems. A lot of these horses are really valuable animals, and the owners and trainers want to look after the injuries probably better than they do on humans in a lot of cases because they're more valuable. Outside that, then, if working with people isn't what interests you, you can work in research, you can work in teaching, you can work in product development with companies as a physio, in ergonomic development, like developing chairs and office furniture and equipment like that. It's just endless where physio can go. It's really down to what you want to do. What I recommend for anyone who's going into physio, try a bit of everything, and your path will lead you where your interests lie, and whatever floats your boat, follow it, and there'll always be something interesting at the end of the road for you. The final point I want to go through with you about physiotherapy is what attributes do you need to be a physiotherapist? In my view, well, the first thing you need is lots of patience, and I don't mean patience of the two-legged type, I mean patience of the virtue type. And you can only have patience through understanding. So everybody that comes into you as a physiotherapist has a problem, and problems frustrate people, and problems can cause people to behave maybe a little bit different than they normally would, especially if you get somebody in a lot of pain. They can be different types of people because they're just maybe not sleeping, and they're short-tempered, and they're just frustrated. So you need to have a lot of patience working with people who have problems, and that's in life in general. And you need to try and understand where they're coming from. And the only way you'll develop understanding is through listening. So you need to be a really good listener. You have to be able to hear what they're saying as well as listen to them, so that you're not just listening for the sake of listening. You're using what they're saying to get a picture of what's going on. You need to like puzzles and problems, because what you're doing is effectively piecing together a puzzle, and you're taking everything they're saying to you, and you're taking everything you're seeing, and you're doing tests, and you're looking at maybe investigations, and you're piecing it all together to solve the puzzle. And that's what I love about physio. You can have two people come in with the same ankle problem, but it needs to be managed in completely different ways, and it's very individual. So you'll never see two injuries the exact same, and what worked for one injury will not always work for another injury. So you need to be adaptable, you need to be able to think on your feet, you need to be able to problem solve, you need to be a listener, and you need to have lots of patience. So I hope that gives you some insight into physiotherapy, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.